You know that feeling when you check the mail and you find this thick, heavy packet of local government paperwork?
Oh, yeah, the kind you usually just toss straight into the recycling bin.
Exactly. I mean, we expect it to be super dry, full of bureaucratic jargon, and honestly, just sort of irrelevant to our day-to-day lives.
Right, but this particular stack of paper, it's actually the complete opposite. It's essentially a blueprint for a fundamental transformation of how the city operates.
Yeah, it's basically flashing neon warning signs.
Truly, we are talking about documents that project a very direct, unavoidable impact on your wallet, your neighborhood, and really the basic foundations of the city.
So if you are a Palm Bay resident or a homeowner or a taxpayer tuning in today through the Palm Bay Air, you really cannot afford to ignore this one.
Definitely not.
Here is our mission for today's deep dive.
Uh,
We are unpacking the official Citizens Accountability Task Force Agenda Packet.
or CATF, for short.
Right, CATF. And this is the material prepared for their upcoming meeting on Monday, August 3, 2026.
Which is coming right up.
It is. Now, I want to be crystal clear right out of the gate here. This deep dive takes absolutely no political sides.
Not at all.
We are looking strictly at the official state of Florida revenue estimates and the Zen City citizen survey data that was provided in this packet. We just want to understand the potential local impact of Florida's proposed Amendment 3.
Right. We're simply here to impartially report what the original source material projects. We are not here to tell you how to vote.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the exact dollars and cents that Palm Bay might lose, we first need to understand what this proposed amendment actually does.
Because, you hear a term like tax reform, and it can mean, well, 100 different things.
It really can. So set the stage for us. What is the context of this specific CATF meeting?
Well, the context is really crucial here. The task force is meeting on August 3 at 6 p.m. at the council chambers on Malabar Road.
Okay.
And the entire purpose of this meeting is to discuss property tax reform and, very pointedly, to engage in a formal exercise regarding how to physically cut city services.
Wow, so they are actually practicing making cuts.
Yeah, they have to practice this because of Amendment 3.
Yeah.
It's officially titled CSHJR 1F, and it requires a 60% supermajority to pass this November 2026.
So let's get into the mechanics of that amendment. For individuals who maintain a permanent residence in Florida by December 31st, 2026, it aggressively expands the homestead exemption.
It really does.
Like currently, the second homestead exemption applies to non-school assessed value between $50,000 and a CPI-adjusted cap. That cap sits around $76,000 this year.
Right. And just to pause there and translate that jargon a bit, non-school just means the state is intentionally firewalling education budgets from this tax cut.
So the schools keep their funding.
Exactly. The
But
schools
the-
keep their funding, but the city and county governments, they take the hit.
Got it. And that CPI-adjusted cap, that's just the state tying the exemption limit to inflation, right? So it floats up as the cost of living rises.
Exactly, yeah. But Amendment 3 completely changes that structure. Under this proposal, that second homestead exemption jumps to a flat $150,000 in 2027.
That is a massive jump.
And it doesn't stop there. It goes up again to $250,000 in 2028.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then after that, it resumes annual inflation adjustments starting in 2029. Plus, it would apply to the total non-school assessed value, rather than just the value sitting above that initial $50,000 mark.
I mean, for a homeowner, that sounds like an incredible deal, right? You keep a lot more of your money.
It does sound great on paper.
But this is where we hit the jaw-dropping headline that's sort of buried in the data of this agenda packet.
Yeah, the math is brutal.
It really is. If this passes, the State Revenue Estimating Conference projects that this amendment would eventually cut the city of Palm Bay's property tax revenue by roughly 66%.
66% of the city's ad valorem tax base just permanently gone.
That's incredible.
And for a municipality, the services you provide are your entire existence. That money is everything.
I really want you, the listener, to just pause and visualize that for a second. Imagine waking up tomorrow to find your own household paycheck permanently slashed by 2/3.
It's unfathomable.
You don't just, tighten your belt or skip a few dinners out at that point. You are forced to make immediate structural changes to how you live.
Yeah, you're selling the car, dropping the insurance, maybe moving into a much smaller house.
Right. A 66% cut to a budget is a fundamental rewrite of reality.
Mm-hmm.
But as with most government policies, this doesn't just happen overnight, does it?
No, it's phased in. Let's walk through the numbers the State Revenue Estimating Conference provided, specifically for Palm Bay.
Okay, lay it on me.
They are using a baseline of $66.9 million. That is Palm Bay's estimated ad valorem collections for fiscal year 2026.
Okay, so roughly 67 million.
Right. So in the first fiscal year, 2026 to 2027, the impact is $0.
Wait, zero?
Yeah, zero. The state wrote a one-year phase-in period into the measure, so local governments won't feel the hit immediately upon the amendment's passage in November.
Okay, so that's the calm before the storm. But then we hit fiscal year 2027 to 2028, when the exemption jumps to $150,000. What happens then?
Palm Bay's projected revenue loss that year is $22 million.
$22 million.
Yeah. That is roughly a 33% drop in property tax revenue right out of the gate.
Wait, how does a city physically prepare for a $22 million drop in a single 12-month period? Like, do they freeze all hiring? Do they just stop paving roads in year one to hoard cash?
That is exactly why the CATF is running these exercises. The shock to the system is immediate, and honestly, it escalates rapidly because the exemption goes up to $250,000 the very next year.
Right, 2028 to 2029.
Exactly. In fiscal year 2028 to 2029, the loss is projected at $35.6 million.
Which is what, like half?
About a 53% drop, yeah. Then in fiscal year 2029 to 2030, it climbs to $38.4 million lost, which is a 57% drop.
It just keeps going.
It does. 2030 to 2031, 41.4 million lost. And finally, by fiscal year 2031 to 2032, the phase-in is effectively complete, resulting in $44.4 million in recurring annual losses.
So every single year moving forward, the city is operating with 2/3 less property tax revenue than it did back in 2026.
Exactly.
Okay, let me push back on this for a second, putting myself in the shoes of a practical taxpayer here.
Sure, go for it.
If the city needs money to keep the lights on and the roads paved, why can't they just raise the tax rate to make up the $44.4 million difference?
It's a logical question.
Right. Like, if the taxable value of the homes drops because of the exemption, couldn't the city council just, increase the millage rate so that the remaining taxable value generates the cash they need?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the Florida Constitution has already anticipated and completely blocked that exact maneuver.
Oh, really?
Yes. Article 7. Section 9 of the state constitution strictly limits municipal operating millage to 10 mills.
Okay, and a mill is what exactly?
A mill is simply $1 of tax for every $1,000 of assessed property value. The agenda packet notes that right now, one mill generates about $10.1 million for Palm Bay.
So there is a hard constitutional ceiling on the tax rate. You can only squeeze so much from the remaining taxable value.
Exactly. The maximum absolute revenue you can generate, even if a city council absolutely maxes out the tax rate against its citizens, is physically limited by the taxable value of the property in the city boundaries.
And Amendment 3 shrinks that taxable value.
Massively. When Amendment 3 removes up to $250,000 of taxable value from almost every home, the pool of money you are allowed to multiply against just shrinks drastically.
Wow.
The city legally cannot tax its way out of the shortfall. It is mathematically impossible to just raise the rate to cover a 66% hole without violating the state constitution.
That is wild. So because the Constitution legally blocks the city from taxing its way out, the CATF has to pivot to their only remaining option, which is massive cuts.
Yep, severe cuts.
But when you look at the statewide survey data included in this packet, the residents' demands for what to cut create a literal logistical nightmare for city planners.
It really does. The packet includes this incredibly detailed statewide survey conducted in June 2026 by Zen City.
Right, the Zen City survey.
Yeah. They polled over 600 Florida residents asking a really simple question. If your local government had to make budget cuts due to this lost revenue, which services should it reduce and which should it protect?
And they gave them a pretty long list, right?
They did. The survey gave respondents 19 different services to choose from, and the absolute most protected service, the one residents flat out refused to touch, was senior services.
Really? Senior services?
Yeah, only 8% of people were willing to cut community centers and senior assistance.
Okay. And what was right behind that?
Right behind that, tied at just 10% willingness to cut, were the immediate, tangible safety nets.
Like what?
Stormwater and drainage, solid waste and trash collection, and public safety, which means police, fire, and EMS.
Which makes sense. I mean, if the city needs to save $44 million, the residents are basically saying, Do not touch our trash pickup. Do not let our streets flood, and make absolutely sure someone calls 911 when we need them.
Exactly.
So where do they actually want the axe to fall? Because the money has to come from somewhere.
The number one target for reduction was economic development and business attraction. Fully 40% of residents offered that up for the chopping block.
Wow, 40%.
Coming in second was code enforcement, which deals with, property standards and nuisance abatement at 31%.
Okay.
Then planning and zoning at 28% and urban forestry and landscaping at 23%.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting to me. The demographic breakdown of that survey explains so much of human behavior here.
It is pretty telling.
Right. Among younger residents, those 18 to 34, only 29% want to cut economic development.
Yeah.
But among residents 55 and older, that jumps to 53%.
Yeah, the older demographic is significantly more willing to sacrifice long-term business attraction just to balance the budget today.
Which is a huge divide.
It is. And we see a similar trend with education, actually. Willingness to cut economic development rises steadily the more formal education a respondent has.
That makes perfect sense if you think about the underlying motivations,
Yeah.
Retirees on fixed incomes. They prioritize immediate tax relief over some 10-year plan to attract tech jobs they're never going to apply for.
Right, exactly.
But young people, they want those commercial hubs to build careers, increase local amenities, and essentially build a future in the city.
Yeah, gutting economic development to save money today is kind of like a delivery driver selling their van to pay for gas.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. You solve today's cash flow problem, sure, but you permanently destroy your ability to generate revenue tomorrow. But, this survey data reveals an even bigger structural misunderstanding between the public and the local government.
Oh, yeah, because citizens are demanding cuts to things they don't even pay for.
Exactly. This is a critical point the task force facilitator highlighted. The survey asked about 19 general local services. Tied for the fifth most popular target for cuts was mosquito control at 22%.
Mosquito control.
Yep. Tied right alongside it, also at 22%, was public libraries. And public health services got 13%.
Okay, let me just break down this jurisdictional confusion because it is incredibly common. If you live in Palm Bay, your Palm Bay City property taxes absolutely fund the police, the fire department, the EMS, city streets, stormwater, and city parks.
All city-run.
Right. But they do not fund mosquito control. That is run by a completely separate Brevard County district.
Exactly. The city of Palm Bay doesn't operate mosquito spraying or run library branches. Your city taxes don't fund the DeGroote Memorial Library or the Palm Bay Public Library.
Because they're part of the county system.
Right. They are part of the Brevard County Library System, funded through a county taxing district. And public health is handled by the county and the state.
It is honestly like trying to lower your own personal grocery bill by demanding your neighbor stop buying milk.
That is exactly what it is.
It doesn't put a single dime back in your own budget. You could scream all day that Palm Bay needs to stop spending money on library books to save the budget, but Palm Bay isn't the one buying the books.
And as a voice of reason here, this is exactly why the CATF is running an exercise specifically on cutting city services. Citizens cannot save the city of Palm Bay from a $44 million budget shortfall by telling the county to spray for fewer mosquitoes.
No, they can't. And since they can't use county services as a financial life raft, the cuts have to come from the departments the city actually controls, like planning, code enforcement, or economic development.
Right, the ones we mentioned earlier.
Which leads us to the long-term operational risks. What happens to a community when those specific departments get slashed?
Well, we have to analyze the mechanisms behind these services. Let's look at economic development and planning and zoning, the services citizens most want to cut.
Okay.
If Palm Bay guts those departments, they eliminate the precise tools a city uses to attract commercial businesses.
And commercial businesses are vital.
They are vital because they share the tax burden. If you have a robust commercial sector, the residential property owners don't have to carry the entire weight of funding the city.
Oh, I see.
So by cutting the ability to attract business, you guarantee the residential taxpayer carries the load forever.
That is a scary thought. And what about code enforcement and public safety? People offered up code enforcement at 31%.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the ripple effect of cutting code enforcement and public safety hits homeowners directly in their bank accounts, just in a completely different way.
How so?
Code enforcement is what prevents neighborhood blight. It ensures people mow their lawns, don't leave abandoned cars in the street, and generally maintain property standards.
Right, which keeps property values up.
Exactly. Less code enforcement leads to visible blight, which depresses property values. But the really hidden mechanism here is how it impacts property insurance.
Tell me more about that, because insurance is already a massive anxiety point for Floridians right now.
Huge anxiety point. Insurance companies rely on grading systems like the ISO rating, the Insurance Services Office rating.
Okay.
They evaluate a city's fire department based on response times, equipment, and water supply. And they also evaluate a city's building codes and code enforcement.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. If a city slashes its fire budget and response times drop, or if they gut code enforcement, the city's ISO rating gets worse. And when those ratings drop, insurance companies hike hazard premiums for every single homeowner in that jurisdiction to cover the increased risk.
So insurance is essentially a hidden tax.
Mm.
If you cut the city budget, which lowers police presence and fire readiness,
Yeah.
property insurance spikes, effectively wiping out the financial relief the tax cut was supposed to bring in the first place.
Exactly.
The Zen City data actually touched on this housing anxiety, didn't it?
It did, and the numbers paint a vivid picture of a very stressed population. 59% of residents are concerned that their city or county will have to cut services because of lost property tax revenue.
Which makes sense given what we just discussed.
Right, and that fear is highest among the youngest demographics, 72% for those 18 to 34. But when you drill down into housing affordability specifically, 57% are concerned that property taxes make it difficult to stay in their home.
Okay.
However, an even higher number, 63%, are concerned that property insurance makes it difficult to remain in their home.
Wow. People are literally more afraid of their insurance company than they are of the tax collector.
The data supports that.
And there is another fascinating contradiction in this data regarding who is actually feeling the anxiety. We call it the renter paradox.
Yes, the renter paradox.
Yeah.
The survey breaks down concern by housing status. Renters express significantly higher anxiety about property taxes than homeowners do.
Which is counterintuitive.
It really is. 63% of renters are concerned that property taxes make it financially difficult to remain in their current home, compared to only 56% of homeowners.
Which is wild on paper, because this proposed Amendment 3, the entire homestead exemption increase we've been talking about, applies specifically and exclusively to property owners who maintain a permanent residence.
Right. Renters do not get a homestead exemption.
Exactly. The apartment complexes they live in are classified as non-homestead commercial properties.
Now, to be fair, the amendment does propose lowering the annual growth cap on non-school assessed value for non-homestead properties from 10% to 5%.
Okay, so a slight change there.
Yeah, so landlords would see some restriction on how fast their taxes could go up year over year. But those massive $150,000 to $250,000 exemptions do not apply to rental units.
This connects directly to the visceral reality of the current housing market, I think. Renters are feeling the highest level of tax anxiety because they're watching corporate landlords pass down every single rising cost.
Oh, absolutely.
Taxes, insurance, maintenance, it all just gets baked directly into their monthly rent.
Yeah.
Even if they don't pay a property tax bill directly, they know they are the ones ultimately absorbing the financial shocks of this city.
They feel the squeeze just as much, if not more.
It is incredibly complex, and it just goes to show how much anxiety exists around the cost of living in Florida right now. People are desperate for relief anywhere they can find it, even if the mechanics of that relief might, dismantle the city they live in.
Which is exactly why the Citizens Accountability Task Force is taking this August 3rd meeting so seriously.
Yeah.
They're looking at a fast-approaching future where 66% of their revenue could vanish, and they have to plan for what remains of Palm Bay after that happens.
So what does this all mean? With stakes this high, what should you, the listener, do with this information right now? First and foremost, stay engaged. We've given you the top-line numbers today, but the full CATF agenda packet is public record.
Yes, definitely review it for yourself.
Look at the State Revenue Estimating Conference's methodology. Look at the Zen City survey questions. Pay attention to the August 3rd CATF meeting at the council chambers.
It's going to be very revealing.
The exercise they're going to conduct, literally practicing how to cut services without violating the Constitution, is going to be a preview of the very real, very painful debates the City Council will have to have if this amendment passes in November.
And, I want to leave the listener with one final provocative thought drawn straight from the text of the source material.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we've spent this entire time talking about the immediate impacts, the 50,000 jumping to 250,000. But buried in the summary of the ballot measure is a provision about future legislative action.
Okay, I'm listening.
The amendment officially directs the state legislature to prescribe a uniform procedure for counties and municipalities to increase the second homestead exemption such that all homesteads are fully exempt from county and municipal levies.
Wait, fully exempt, as in zero property taxes for homeowners, ever.
That is what the amendment directs the legislature to figure out a process for in the future. The state estimating conference didn't assign a dollar figure to it because there's no timeline, but the intent is explicitly written into the text.
That is staggering.
So I pose this lingering question for you to consider. If property taxes are the absolute lifeblood of Palm Bay's existence, funding the police, the fire department, the roads, and the stormwater drains, what does a future look like if those taxes are eventually phased out completely? How does a city even exist?
A city without revenue. That is an image that will definitely stick with you as you head to the ballot box. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the best tool for local governance is an informed citizen. Keep reading, keep questioning, and we will see you next time.